don't point it at me. Hello, we're out here in the dark today to talk about lights. Now, LED lights have got better and better each year. If you understand better to mean brighter.
Yeah, these days you can get a torch style light this big, which claims to put out 2,500 lumens of light. There's no reasonable speed you couldn't ride on the road with that kind of illumination, and there are a few quite unreasonable speeds that you would be fine too.
Yeah, now the aim of today's video isn't really scientific, it's more of a subjective test. How bright is too bright? Now, like the majority of you, I'm a cyclist, but I also drive. So in a normal nighttime scenario, which of these lights would I consider to be antisocial? Now,
I'm gonna go with this one.
At this point, I'm keen to point out that it's a big gap between something being a bit off and something being actively dangerous. Probably like you, I've had cars flash me and other cyclists shout at me actually when I've been using a light that I'd consider to be well within the bounds of decency.
Yeah, I think that happens kind of all the time especially on the traffic-free paths around here, actually.
They're the worst, aren't they? Anyway, I'm going to sit in my car in a deserted part of North Somerset, and Liam is going to ride at me with a selection of lights on his bars, and then I'm going to tell him what I think of him.
Glad you've chosen the nice warm car.
Yeah, I'll put the heat on, don't worry.
Now, if you want to find out more stuff to think about when you're buying a front light, then we've done a general buyer's guide too, which is popping up now.
Yeah, now one thing to consider that we will be talking about today is the beam shape and how that affects things. So as well as the range of brightnesses for these lights, we'll be using lights that use different sorts of lenses, and we'll talk about how well they work for road riding at the end too. Anyway, starting off with Liam, let's have a look at the lights we'll be trying out tonight.
First up is the Cat-Eye Amp 200. This is one of two lights that are at the bottom end of the power range for this video, putting out 200 lumens. It's a pretty standard torch style light, and it's nice and light at just 62 grams. It's easy to fit too with a simple silicone band. The light uses Cat-Eye's Opticube lens, which is a pretty standard round beam.
Right, moving on to this is the Sigma Lux 80. The 80 stands for 80 lux, which is another way of measuring output. This is what you'll often hear called a German beam because it complies with the German regulations for bike lights. What that means is it's a cut-off beam where 95% of the light has to land on the road and not in another road user's eyes.
Like that.
Lux and lumens aren't directly comparable, but these two lights, the amp and this one, are pretty similar in terms of output.
So turning it up a notch, the Moon Rigel light with 500 lumens of power is a mid-range light, and there's a refractive bit on the top of the lens that is designed to point the light beam down a bit towards the road. Dave, what do you reckon to this? There you go.
It's quite bright.
Again, it's usefully small and light, and Moon use a Garmin style quarter-turn mount if you want to use that to make it easy to fit to your bars, even your out front mount.
So this is the Raidman CR450, which has a similar output of 450 lumens, but the main difference between this and the Moon is the Raidman uses a much more complicated refractive lens to make the beam shape wider and flatter. The idea is that it isn't as dazzling to oncoming traffic. And more light goes on the road. It's not as stark as the cutoff on that German beam Sigma though.
I'm just going to struggle to see the script now. Going up again, the Sigma Buster 700 has...
700.
You might have guessed.
Is it 700?
It's 700.
Yeah.
Funny. That's fairly bright for a single LED torch style light such as this, and this kind of power is where you'd start if you were taking your riding onto some gravel, maybe trails.
Yep. And then up again, Lesign 1600 XXL has not one but three LEDs up front and is about twice as powerful as the Sigma Buster. This is a light that's designed to be fully capable, keeping you upright off-road at speed. It also has a useful race mode where it's just full power and low power on the button, a bit like a full and dip beam on a car, which is quite handy.
I've used that. That's very good. And lastly, Raveman's PR2400, almost half as powerful again, and if the numbers are to be believed, 12 times more powerful than our little Cat-Eye. We're expecting this one to be pretty anti-social on full beam, if we're honest. Although, like the smaller Raveman light, it has got a dipped beam as well, so you can use that on the road. But let's start with the lowest power lights and work our way up to this absolute unit.
Right, well, you take all the lights and get them ready, and I'll sit in the car and get the heater going. It's getting a bit cold out. And we'll see what they look like when they're being driven at you.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay, first up, Cat-Eye Amp 200 coming towards me. Well, surprisingly bright, that light. There we go. How was that?
It was actually all right. Like, my eyesight's quite good. I know these roads. It's quite flat. There's no potholes. If I wanted to go down country lanes and maybe twisty descents, then yeah, I'd want something.
Surprisingly bright coming towards me, but I think you've got it pitched up quite a lot, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I wanted it to really throw the light, but you need to, I think, as well.
Okay, let's level up.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, it's really noticeable how different that is.
It's so noticeable when you're on the bike as well, because it's a flat beam. Whenever you're out the saddle, the beam's going like that.
Yeah, you don't get that with a round beam.
You don't.
But how is it for actually riding for that kind of speed?
Yeah, I'm looking at the spot now on the road where it's illuminated. Is one, right where you need it to be illuminated, and two, it's super bright and focused. That's brilliant. The problem is around it, it's terrifying because you can't see anything. If I was going to be using one of these lights, and I think they are a better light, I would want a head beam as well.
So you can point at things you want to look at.
Yeah, and you know, just so when you're cornering, I can actually, because when you're cornering, obviously you look through the corner, and the bars don't go through the corner. You
can't really see anything out there. But coming towards you on the road, it's really noticeable that there's very little light coming up into your eyes. It's really good.
That's good, because especially on a narrow road, you don't want to dazzle the driver that's coming towards you, because they need to be able to judge their distance, spacing, and everything. So yeah, in terms of safety for both parties, I think these are a lot better.
Cool.
Funny enough, the Germans have it dialed, don't they?
Next. Yeah, how was that? That's not too bad. It's kind of similar to a car headlight, I'd say, in terms of how bright it was for me,
For me, the most noticeable thing is that the beam shape is really quite narrow, but it's tall, which is great because that's where you're going to be going. You know, that's where your front wheel's going to be pointing. Do I need more side visibility? I don't think so.
No,
I was quite happy with that one.
Yeah, I mean that light's got a bit of a refractive lens on it, so it's pointing it down a little bit more, and it's noticeable when it's coming towards you that there's not as much light spilling up.
My front tyre's illuminated, which is
that's very useful.
Super useful because I stare at that all the time. Anyway, should we level up and
let's go again. Skids for the kids.
Not for kids.
How's that?
It's interesting that this one has a very, very flat beam at the bottom, and then it spreads it out.
Yeah, it's quite wide, isn't it, that beam?
Yeah.
It's a beam that I quite like, actually, on that one.
I quite like this one too.
Yeah.
It gives you a pretty good view of the road.
Yeah, coming towards me, it was a little bit brighter than the moon. So I think there was just there's more light spilling out sideways, and I think you get a little bit, because you're coming past me that way, you get more kind of coming towards you that way.
I feel like it's quite a wide beam.
Yeah.
It's throwing it out there. Next.
Yeah, they're getting quite bright now, aren't they?
You know, I'm getting to the point where I'm quite happy with what I'm seeing of the road. I think that's enough.
Yeah, 700 lumens is enough for you, is it?
Yeah, I'd always get a bigger light than this, just to have the bigger battery and run it down
you could step it down, it'll last longer.
Yeah, you want more than enough for your ride after work.
I have to say, if that was coming towards me on a dark lane like this, I'm not sure how happy I'd be. It's quite a piercing light, that. Because it's a single LED putting out all that, it's quite a kind of point of light.
Yeah. Got more to come though, haven't we?
Haven't we?
Shall we?
Should we go bigger?
Yes.
Don't point it at me.
Haha, right. I said I was happy with the last one. I'm really happy with this one.
Yeah, that's a lot of light for this kind of work.
I'd be really happy to have this if I was doing those more country lane, exploring, maybe even a little bit of gravel on this. I would be very careful to use the race mode.
I think the race mode is excellent. Yeah.
And you can flick really easily. There's also a remote switch that you can get with these. That's really good. I got really used to it last winter, flicking between the two. I had something similar to this. You just get used to flicking it into a lower mode when there's something approaching.
Yeah.
Plus, I was cautious to point this a bit more down because I know how bright it is. But that does give you really good illumination of the road right in front of you. So if you're cautious about hitting potholes, that can be really good.
Yeah.
More?
We've only got one left.
Oh, have we?
Yeah.
Is it the big one?
It is the big one.
Oh no, what a shame. I can see everything.
I bet you can. Funnily enough, not as bright as the Lesign coming towards me. No, partly because that's got a dip beam in the middle that you can use on its own.
I mean, the real benefit to this light is the visibility. You can see everything. You can, your hedgerow visibility is brilliant, so you can spot deers and stuff. And it's throwing so much light down the road that nothing is surprising me, even if you were riding, you know, real up at sprint speed.
Yeah. And also with that one, again, you've got a remote you can use, you've got a high-low mode you can use, so you can put it on full beam when you need to, and then put it back on dip beam when you don't. So it's a really versatile light for on-road and off-road, and that's what Steve thinks, obviously, in his review.
I'd be very, very confident riding with this if I was taking in a lot of back lanes, like the real gritty ones and stuff, where the surface can be quite bad. And obviously you don't have to run it in this mode all the time, so you've got some fantastic battery life. Like, and I can see I've got 1 hour 24 on this mode, which is the brightest. Knock it down a few,
you get 12 hours, you get all night at 300 lumens.
I do not want to ride that much. But it is good for a week's worth of riding without thinking about it, which is a really good benefit. Yeah, so what should we do? Go and get warm?
Yes, go and get warm. Well, you can get warm, I'm fine in here. But we'll pack up and then we'll see what we found out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're back in the office and we've learnt many things out in the dark. I mean, one thing I learned was that the angle that the light is at is really, really important. That was the first thing I noticed, because that first cat eye, not very bright, but actually right in your eyes, it's quite a light.
It's also very interesting to compare different beam shapes against each other, because you buy a front light and you have it for years. You never, I mean, we're a bit different because we're testing lights.
We're lucky.
When really never comparing them back to back. So it is incredible how the different beam shape actually affects how much you can see, how confident you are, how fast you can go.
So if you're going to pick one of those 7 lights to actually ride out in the dark with on your lanes, what are you going to go with?
I'm going to go for the big one.
I've already guessed that you're going to go for the... Put it down here. There you go.
200 quid, I think, these. But if you are one of those riders that's doing, a bit of gravel, a bit of road, maybe some mountain biking, this will do it all. It's one light, it runs forever if you're just using it for the road. I can't really see much, and it's easy to use as well. So I can't really see much reason that you wouldn't go for that one.
It's very aero.
It does not, it's very heavy as well. But yeah. Like, my winter bike's already very heavy, it doesn't matter.
For me, sitting in a car, being driven at, easily the best light was this one, the Sigma 80. So this German beam is really, really effective at keeping light out of your eyes if you're coming towards in a car. I mean, it's just like a dip beam on a car, you know, you don't get that dazzling effect. And actually, what we really need is we need that amount of power in the full beam, light manufacturers take note, with also a German beam in the middle, because there's no reason why that can't be done, I can see.
Well, you just put the front end of that one on this.
Yeah, and add some big LEDs around it to make it brighter.
Yeah. That'll do.
And a button to turn them on and off.
Yeah.
That's all we need. Thank you, light manufacturers. It's not that difficult. That's all from us from this very unscientific video. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions about any of the lights, anything we did, ask them in the comments below. We'll help you out.
If you've got any more science that you'd like us to cover, don't ask us because we're not going to do it sciencey. But yeah, if you've got any more things like this that you'd like us to investigate, stuff that causes Dave pain, shining in eyes, that was good fun.
Yeah, thanks.
That's all right.